Thousands of snowflakes competing for openness. Thousands of you and me gathering into her family.
Hello, I'm Yan Yan. Today I'm in Zhangjiakou, one of the two host cities of the 2022 Winter Olympic Games. As you can see, I'm standing below the Great Wall. Today I tell you the story of the city and why it was chosen as the host city of the Winter Olympics. First, about the name of the city, Zhangjiakou. Kou in Mandarin literally means mouth. It also means the entrance to something. Deriving from this meaning, Kou can also mean a pass. So Zhangjiakou in history was a pass, and it's a very important pass. Why? On the ridgeline of the hill behind me is the Great Wall, which was a border wall. Outside the Great Wall is the nomadic region, and inside the agrarian region. So Zhangjiakou in history was a pass on the Great Wall. From this angle, the shape of the pass is clear, but it's more clear on the map taken by satellite. The river cuts through the mountain and left a passage here. The Great Wall was constructed on the ridgeline of the mountains, as well as the passage to close it up. Due to its strategic location, not long after the construction of the Great Wall, a fort was built here inside the Great Wall, and it's this one, the Zhangjiakou Fort. It's where the city actually started. Six centuries later, the wall of the fort was almost gone, except for small sections on the west and on the north side. Next to the northern gate, the castle wall is protruding. There is a temple atop the wall. But when the fort was constructed, this was used as a watchtower. Being the highest place of the fort, it could monitor the entire area between the fort and the Great Wall. Around the 16th century, it was converted into a temple. That's because the Ming Dynasty signed a peace treaty with the Mongols, and tensions between the two cooled down. Trade, on the other hand, warmed up. As the Ming Dynasty and the Mongols reached the peace treaty, a border market was opened outside the small gate on the Great Wall. Mongolian businessmen would come here to purchase necessities that were not produced in the Mongolian steppe, such as grains, salt, tea, silk, etc. And in exchange, they sold horses, sheep, fur, and so on. As trade volumes increased in the border market, another fort was constructed right inside the Great Wall to house institutions that manage trade-related issues. And as you can see, I'm working on the ruins of the wall of the fort. So by early 17th century, there were two forts in Zhangjiakou. This one on the north is called the Upper Fort, and the original fort was called the Lower Fort. This is the northern gate of the Upper Fort. It's linked to the border market via a path. The gate might look small, but when I walked close to be a reference, you would find it's pretty high. And it is deep. Soldiers would be deployed on the wall above to monitor those who enter the fort. Although peace treaty was signed, it was still the border area. These are original stones on the path and are protected inside the glass cap. The first period of fast development for Zhangjiakou was during the Qin Dynasty, the last dynasty of China, when the Manchus from northeast China conquered the Mongols and maintained a good relationship with them through marriages between Manchu princesses and Mongol tribal leaders. The Great War technically was no longer a border war. 1,000 years after the Silk Road, the Great Tea Road between China and Eurasia emerged, and the route from Zhangjiakou to Ulaanbaatar was an important part of the Great Tea Road. As trade volume exploded, the original border market was too small for the trades going on here, and a larger border market was opened outside this big gate behind me. In Mongolian language, this gate was pronounced as Khelgan, and for a long time, Zhangjiakou was known as Khelgan to foreigners. I guess it's because when Eurasian businessmen talked about Zhangjiakou, they would usually refer to the border market outside Khelgan. Trade also changed the lower fort. Businessmen across the country moved to the lower fort and opened up stores and farms here. This house used to be a draft bank established by Shanxi merchants who were major players in business on the Great Tea Road. They opened up draft banks across the country and even in the Far East. Zhangjiakou was definitely one of their major bases. The exquisite wood carving suggests that this was the house of a rich family. Everyone wanted to get a share in the profitable trade. Not only did businessmen across the country came here, but also foreigners. This house used to be the office of a Russian farm. This was a German farm. And this, an American farm. It was when the U.S. probably just came out of the Civil War for not long and was on the way of rising. The entire lower fort turned from a military castle to a business center. The Qing Imperial Court established an institution in between the upper and the lower fort in charge of both military and trade issues. This was the office of a Japanese company, Mitsu Yokohama. They came here in early the 20th century. It was due to the construction of a railway from Beijing to Zhangjiakou. On the east bank of the river, there is an old train station constructed over 100 years ago in 1909 as part of the Beijing to Zhangjiakou railway project. That railway has a very important position in Chinese history because it was the first rail designed, financed, and constructed all by Chinese without any help from foreign countries. After the construction of that railway, there was an influx of population. Business centers and office buildings were constructed centered around this train station, and the east bank of the river became very prosperous. This train station is so small. Behind me is the entrance and the waiting hall. The tracks are over here. The train station stopped functioning in 2014 because a new and a modern train station has been constructed about 10 kilometers south from here, and the old railway has been replaced by high-speed railway. But some of the old tracks are kept in their original places, which is now in an industrial park. As China got into consecutive wars, and most importantly, as trade shifted to the ocean, coastal ports replaced Zhangjiakou, and the city lost its position in the international trade. have climbed up to the hill on the west of the pass, and it is snowing now. This is right about the Winter Olympics. It reminds me of the theme song of the opening ceremony, Snowflake. Snowflake, snowflake, open to the light, all around us.
千万雪花竞相开放，万千你我汇聚成一个家。Thousands of snowflakes competing for openness. Thousands of you and me gather into her family.
An Olympic village, as well as some venues, are located in the mountainous suburb of Zhangjiakou, 50 kilometers away from the city and 200 kilometers from Beijing. As illustrated on the map, it's right by the high-speed rail from Beijing that was just completed recently and solely serves this region. Many ski resorts have been built in this region after Beijing was chosen as the host city of the 2022 Winter Olympics. Due to the fame of the Olympics, this region has been a very popular destination for ski. A question is, the northern suburbs of Beijing are full of mountains. Why bother to build an Olympic village and so many ski resorts in the suburb of Zhangjiakou and a costly high-speed railway to connect Beijing with this region? As you've seen, Zhangjiakou is a smart city and not as developed as Beijing. Actually, in China, we call it a fourth-tier city. One of the purposes of the Beijing Winter Olympics is to get as many Chinese as possible into the winter sports. But after the market has been generated, it is important to make sure that not only Beijing gets to share this market, but also a smart city like Zhangjiakou. China's ability to generate growth is visible. But going forward, a big challenge is how the growth can be widely shared. The Beijing Winter Olympics is one of the attempts to generate shared growth. As its slogan says, together for a shared future.
在远方都一样闪亮。Snowflakes, snowflakes, open to the light. All around, shining all the same.